Today I'm going to teach you how to take a piece of fabric and turn it into a skirt. This skirt has one seam and it is a wrap skirt that does not flash anyone when the wind blows. Let's get started. The kind of fabric you want is a knit fabric with a good amount of drape. A jersey will curl at the edges when it's cut, and an interlock or double knit will not. I recommend that there is spandex in the fabric to make it have great recovery. Lay out your fabric and fold it along the cross grain instead of the grain line. You will match up the cut edges to cut edges with the selvages along the edge. Make sure you smooth out both layers very well so there are no wrinkles that will mess up your cutting. I'm going to move the fabric so that the fold is along the bottom of the screen, the selvages are on the right side and the left side, and the cut edges are along the top. This is the shape you will be cutting out, and if you need the measurements, you can go to my blog to find the free pattern. Once you have found your measurements, you can draw out the pattern piece on your fabric. Each of you will be making a completely different skirt with different measurements because we all have different bodies and different measurements, and that's perfect. So you can see I'm doing the inner circle right now. That's what I'm drawing out. And the shape that I'm drawing out, I will be cutting out two pieces, but they will be opposite because when you fold the fabric is facing away from each other. So I'm going to draw the shape, but once I cut it out, I will be cutting two pieces that are mirror of each other. I used a dark pencil to mark my pattern piece on my light colored fabric, but the video did not pick it up very well, so you'll have to trust that I am drawing the shape. So I like to draw the center circle with my radius, and then I draw the outer edge all the way around the skirt in that big kind of 3/4 of a circle. And then after I mark a bunch of dots, I draw the lines in between so that I connect it and see the curved shape between all the dots. Now that you have your pattern piece drawn out, you will cut it out. I like to use scissors when I'm doing something this large because I do not have a cutting mat this large. But if you have a very large cutting mat, you can use a rotary cutter and your cutting mat because a rotary cutter cuts fabric or cuts knit fabric a little bit easier than scissors. I'm using scissors, but I'm being very careful so that I get a smooth hem since I will not be sewing a hem. This is the final edge of the fabric that I'm cutting with my scissors. So it is sped up so it looks like I'm going very fast, but I was going very slow and careful so that I don't get any nicks or weird edges on my hem. So I just cut out the outer edge of the skirt, and I'm now going to cut the center circle out. So there's a little tie, which is how you tie the skirt, that is in the middle of the circle. And then I'm cutting around that tie to get the waist part of the circle. See, there's that little edge that becomes the bow, the tie that I tie it. And that is how I cut out the skirt. With right sides together, I'm going to sew that one straight edge of the pattern piece with a zigzag stitch. I use a zigzag stitch because this is knit fabric and the stitch needs to stretch with the fabric. I have a pretty deep seam allowance because that is how I drew my pattern piece. But when you draw your pattern piece, you can have a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch seam allowance for a smaller seam allowance. So I'm sewing a regular zigzag stitch down the straight edge of the skirt and it's right sides together. When I started, I did a back stitch with the zigzag, and when I end, I'm also going to do a back stitch with the zigzag. Now, if you have a serger, you can serge the seam to have a nice finished edge. If you do not have a serger, you can just do another row of zigzag stitches right next to your first row to finish the edge of the fabric. Now you're going to iron that seam and press the seam allowance to one side of your skirt. You can choose which side you want it to go towards and press it well. The last thing you need to do is tack those seam allowances, and if you serged the serger thread, to one side, the side that you pressed, so that that seam will not unravel. So I pressed it to one side and now I am stitching it down. Do you see that seam allowance? So I'm just going to do a tiny straight stitch, 3 stitches forward and 3 stitches back to tack the seam allowance to one side and finish that edge. That was the top edge of the skirt next to my waist. And now I'm going to do the hem of the skirt and tack that seam allowance. So I tuck that thread inside, and then I do a little tack of a couple straight stitches forward and back to keep that seam from coming apart. To put the skirt on, place the seam on one side of your body, wrap the skirt around the back, and with one hand hold the tie from the back and the seam. Wrap the other edge of the skirt around to the front, and then tie the tie in a bow or a knot. If you love this skirt and how easy it is, follow my channel and like this video. Thanks for watching.